Hi, Liz.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty
You're in
good.
the rainforest, maybe, or
Oh, this is
somewhere nice.
it's the Hanging Lake, which is outside, like a couple hours outside of Denver.
Okay, cool.
It's like the extent of my hiking, which is like you only have to go about a mile, but it's also mostly up. So
Great. Looks amazing. I've only ever been to Denver City, the city of Denver.
yeah,
Downtown, which was nice, but yeah, flying visit.
city. But yeah, there's a lot you're missing out on if you don't get to go elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Yushi. Hello, Dragan.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good.
There's a heat wave. It's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a lot. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not about this whole summer thing.
Is that
Totally
almost
agree.
40?
Yeah, it's close to 40, and tomorrow is like 42, 43 estimated. So really looking forward to that.
Cool. And you don't have air conditioning, of course, because you don't usually need it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking yesterday. It seems that in Germany, it's not very common to have AC. I literally cannot imagine that. So that was a fun fact.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because they do get quite hot summers. Mid-Europe does get quite hot. Yeah, it's raining here. In other weather news, we also heard Oregon has got record temperatures, which is not that close to Liz, but I don't know, is the temperatures getting up your way?
Yes.
It is as well. Okay.
Yeah, like high 30s later, like this weekend. It'll be like 90 Fahrenheit. So we don't have air conditioning, so I'm not living right now. I have we've been trying to figure out the fan situation to get the cool air in at night and not lose it during the day. So I'd say it hit about 75 Fahrenheit in the apartment yesterday. That was not cool. So
good luck.
yeah, I'm ready for snow.
You've got a long time to wait. But anyway, you're in the right place for snow, I guess. 6 months of the year. Cool. Yeah, I found out about Oregon because of there was a post shared up on the Share It channel by Kevin, who is into climate modeling or something. It seems like he's doing something with their Landsat data for surface temperatures. So he said he's writing a paper over the next few weeks, so it'll be really good to see what that ends up being about. It's great. And what was good is because he's wanting a specific template to get his paper out in, which is the SPIE, which is this optics, SPIE, is signal processing and optics or something, society. I presented there once a long time ago. So we'll get that added to the testing pipeline and make sure that that can be rendered. Again, all templates welcome. And I'll just add it to the queue. Great. So Rowan's coming along. It's going to be along in a bit and maybe show off some of the new referencing features. I've got I've been plugging away still on templates. I'm deep into Python code. And there is much regular expressions. There is much latex rendering going on. But that's going okay. It's just a matter of trudging through what we decided to build and getting the code set up. The particular bits that we need to glue together is being able to specify the template options and the user being able to override some of those options and add some even custom options to that. And just getting that all brought together so that then we render out a consistent text document is what I'm in the middle of. But what we managed to take a break from that with yesterday was Rowan and I got into some of the thinking about how the UI should change. And previously we had this little picture of what the next generation UI should be, as it were. That instead of going direct to a download, you come download from here. It gets you to a list of things you've exported in the past, and then you can choose something new and, you know, go off and choose a template to apply for that, and then have pretty much the same processing flow. That was the original idea, but we've refined that and leveled it up a bit. So now we're
blown
going
out the scope is maybe another way to say it.
blown out the scope, yeah, but in a good way. So instead of having this single article and just sort of small step of where we are now, we wanted to start thinking about what happens when I put a thesis together, or I want to put a book together, and I end up having content in multiple articles, and I want to be able to pull that in some way. And we got to thinking of export as a job. So rather than export being this sort of click on I want to export, then having to configure a lot of stuff and then getting my PDF at the end, we wanted to turn it around and make it more like a build system, as it were. So you want to export a PDF for your article, you set up that template and options queue once, and then you have a job sort of set up. And every time you save that article, it's going to create a new PDF for you with the latest changes, with that settings applied. With those settings applied. And that starts us to get us thinking about structuring it like more like a build system with a sequence of jobs. So the second generation UI for this is basically to have something centered on the project settings where we can set up a list of exports. And that's a place where you can go and find out which jobs are configured for your project. And in this case, for example, there's one configured to export a PDF with a template, the default template for Article 1 as the title. You can reach in to see the logs and the history and stuff. And a user got to that, or got to create that either by creating new export here and selected that article, or just by saying export as from the article itself. And then was able to get into that familiar flow that we'd already mapped out, which was these 4 screens. That allows you to choose your templates, configure your options, and then there's some updates on what's happening if you want to sit and watch the progress. And then once that's created, we go in and we start populating a better menu from the article itself with the fact that you're able to download that PDF that you just created. So that means if you go on and you configure multiple jobs for that particular article, you will then have multiple items in this menu to choose from for every version of the article as you save it. And that was the increase in scope type thing, because we got really enthused about this idea of the jobs. And because the export process is essentially that, it's a set of templates. If we define a job, we don't have any of this issue around having to go back and reset options every time we want to create an updated PDF as we update our content. And investing in this sort of job structure and the database changes it, its sort of needs, we're going to be able to have all sorts of jobs in place in future. So another job in place in future might be push to GitHub, or might be update a report, or update charts, or you've updated this article, then update this article where you've used the plot, or and things like that.
Sorry, may I ask?
Mm-hmm.
So you have your article and then you set up different potential outputs, different templates that you will use, and they are all scheduled to be pre-rendered as you're making changes. Is that correct?
Well, as you save, definitely, but that's a good point. As you're making changes, is almost like a preview, no? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's on save only.
Yeah. That's what we just thought of now, but also we could just have that on draft. So if you're in the middle of writing something and you haven't saved yet, you could just still have a look. But yeah, essentially on some type of action, save.
Yeah, we're certainly not running them all the time because even a PDF takes about like two minutes to create, and so that's something that's an on-demand task. And I think the job runner would be on when you actually save the article as a saved version, and then it creates the PDF for you. That's sort of what we're seeing from how people are using it today, is they're saving it and then immediately like asking for a new PDF or export. And so just skipping that step and auto creating it for them.
Okay.
And that could be cron as well. That could be, there might be a need to publish that. Yeah. No, on save makes sense. I mean, for the current use case.
However you're building, you're probably doing some like pub sub architecture and just like sending a message, and then somebody who is interested in that specific queue topic, whatever, will just handle it. Definitely rendering on save makes sense as it's saving computational resources. But one thing that came to my mind is to like render incrementally, or like render just the difference in the PDFs. So instead of rendering entire PDF all the time, maybe it would make sense to render only the pages that have changed. But again, as far as I know, the PDF format structure, like you could create changes that could affect all the pages, which would again force re-rendering of all the pages. I'm not sure, like if the idea is to go towards some live preview, which I don't think it is, and that there is no need. Yeah, but it's just some.
Yeah, I guess the idea there is that the HTML is the live preview. and so that's sort of, and then these are more, I think like the one place where we get into trouble is like page numbers are still, or page lengths are still a thing, and we don't have a good way of showing up front like how many pages. And so like that was something that someone came on, they wanted to like keep on running until they were like got rid of enough sentences to like fit on 3 pages or something, which is is a thing. And then and you're right about a change is not localized, it's global. So you could add a figure and that changes figure numbers everywhere. And so I don't think LaTeX has a good way of incrementally building a PDF. I don't know, Steve, if you know.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But I don't think so.
It
does multiple reconciliation passes anyway, just to figure out how to lay stuff out.
Page numbers and stuff,
yeah. I think the closest to a live preview, I don't think, for me, it wouldn't be a live preview, but it might be a preview without saving that opens up in one half of your window. So you don't have to go off to the file system to save, to open the PDF in Acrobat or anything like that. That might be we're not going to do that now, but I can see that getting it quickly beside the content might be an ask at some point. but then that's not, it's definitely not live. It'd still be somebody pressing preview, I think.
I like that though, because then you're at least like, you don't have to download the PDF. You could just kind of quickly pop it open, and if it's not what you want, you can go back and edit things.
Yeah.
I did like the comment on like a diff. Is that one of the ones that's listed there, to just have a diff PDF between, like, say, the last version, or that you could put in the options? So many places require it, and I would love to not have to rerun like LaTeX diff and then have to run that tech file and get a diff PDF. That would be really good.
So many places. You mean, so to do a LaTeX diff because?
So like they're required in like provisions for journal submissions, or just like every time I would change something in a paper or report or anything, my advisor was just like, can I have the diff file? I just want to see what you've changed. Or I would love to have one from him to see what he changed. So I'm not really
more specifically
like a 20-page paper to be like, you changed 2 words and 1 caption.
Yeah.
So that would be.
PhD supervisor went in and started changing pluses to minuses because he didn't like the syntax of, and that like screwed up. Well, I don't know, my entire
all the science.
Yeah, all the science. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which was, anyways, I did have it in version control, so I did see that he did that, but it was one of those things where, yeah, the diff is pretty important.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's a yeah.
That would be
exactly. I guess where we got to Ron and I was that we saw there's a certain way to build out the infrastructure that would set us up for this job sort of concept that would have broader reach.
Yeah.
And it's almost like building CI style, or building what you would knock together yourself in your make file if you're doing this on disk. Bringing that up into the platform beside the writing in the future.
And one of the other things that people have asked for a lot is better integration with Git, and this is also starting to get to that side of things, because we can have one of these actions push back to GitHub on sort of a periodic,
or periodic, yeah,
and like have other export targets, and then you can like carry on with GitHub actions over there and create static pages if you want, or something else.
Yeah. So a quite minimal thin slice, I think, of this, because this whole export pane up here could get pretty fully featured. I think for the immediate sort of next slice, we'll just sort of upgrade this menu and then still focus on the single article creation for this part of the flow. And then this place off in the settings will be a place where you visit maybe, and just have some very simple controls like disable the job, or rerun it manually, and be able to see that these things exist, and get to your history and logs from here.
Like your robot off.
That was the best I could do with the MIUI, I think. Yeah. But we'll actually push and set up a good part of make the part of the database change about the bigger thing.
To me as a user, this menu will, like, what happens if there is a job that is still running and I click download PDF? Is that downloading the previous version? And is that what I desire actually?
I think this menu here, I think we're still going to have like a processing or pending things in there, and then it'll pop up when it's ready.
Okay, makes sense.
And we'll populate that depending on what happens. Yeah, which outputs are configured. Sorry, but then I think there'll be. I haven't put any dividers in here or anything. I think there'll be some like groupings in terms of you'll always be able to grab your bibtech, and that's not a thing we have to go and process as a job. And your MD maybe that's a job. maybe not. It depends. I guess that depends on how heavy that is. For the notebooks, for example, they'll always have the iPNY notebook available, because that isn't a heavy job. That's easy for us to serialize straight out of the database. So that'll always be there. And then these things will sort of, the bits in the middle will populate and become ready as the things process. I quite like this menu. We quite like Eli's menu, actually. Yeah. Got this nice clean separation of the different parts of what you can download. So we'll probably aim for something like that sort of auto-populates.
Yeah, some of the things that we still haven't quite thought through is like when you have one article in our parlance, which is like a chapter of a larger piece of work, where those sorts of downloads happen. Like if you have a thesis or a book, where is the download for that PDF, I guess? And I don't know quite where to put that in the UI.
Yeah.
Download for multiple articles, or?
Yeah. So say your project is your thesis, and you have preface,
five
chapters 1 to 10,
yeah.
appendix, and etc. or whatever, and you're building a PDF of the whole thing. And then maybe you've got some extra items in there that you don't get included in the book, but that you're working notes. There's some extra notebooks, etc. So it might not be the whole project, but we need maybe to think about where we can pick up that download from. One of the ideas was, if the article is included in a book or in a larger thing, then it also gets listed in here. So that's a way to get to the whole thesis. But
yeah, so in my understanding, the left menu, the blue thing, is just for navigation, and whatever you're seeing in the middle and on the right is for article.
Yeah.
Trying to fit a button that is something transformative for the entire project seems not weird, but there might be the place for it, but it's weird. In that, I'm not sure what the name of that is, like project overview, which is not like with the editor, but just like having different articles in the project or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I had the same thought. Like, if it's just the article that you're coming out, you've got what you have now in that drop down. But if it's for the entire project, then the option would be in that nav panel, because it belongs to the project, not to the article or the notebook. And then you can like select which ones and move them around or whatever and choose an order. I like that distinction that we've kind of come up with, which is, it's a project, it's over here. You can't see my hands. Anyway, it's an article, it's on the other side. So.
Yeah. Because we were sort of thinking that this could contain views on things as well as potentially just the articles. Like another view in there could be like a gallery where you have all the thumbnails of the articles, which is maybe like the overview. I don't know if like a files or downloads thing, where that's just the view of the current active downloads right across the project is another way to do that. But
just change your UI. Boom, done.
Yeah.
I really like the views kind of thing, because like maybe considering even an editor is just one potential view of the articles that you have. And like if you have created PDFs or markdowns or whatever, or some other PDF in a different arrangement of articles, that is another view. But I'm not sure, like that sounds super awesome and super powerful, but how confusing would it be? I'm not sure. Is it too powerful? Is that for all the users, or maybe who is, I don't know, an editor trying to come up with just like one issue of a journal or something like that? Maybe not everybody is super interested in that, but it definitely is if that were to exist, it would be a power feature for sure.
Yeah. Another view could be the bibliography view, which you just sort of get every citation you pulled into the project in a table. I guess, yeah. I guess it depends.
I do like having, because one of the other pieces that we're trying to get over the line is removing that unlisted part of the navigation, bringing all of that up. And so potentially we have some room for downloads or something, even at the, like, at the bottom, I don't know. Or some other, like, project-wide, these are files that have been pinned, or maybe they're just part of the nav or the sidebar completely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room in the sidebar to do different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. And you should feel free to go to town on these. You've got to do better than this. This is my first little layout, and we've got that sort of thing going on in the current dialogues. But I'd like that to be a lot better from a UI perspective.
Then we haven't talked about the options UI at all. It's just like a blank screen, because maybe we just don't know enough about the.
We could still lay it out. It's definitely going. We know it's going to be data driven, and we'll probably have multiple sections in some type of scrolling through, and it can be arbitrary length. We don't have the control over the length. That's driven from the template.yaml that comes in with the template when it goes up onto the GitHub repository. And we're going to have a mix of things like free-form text fields, booleans. So we're going to have toggles. We're going to have some text fields.
Choices.
We're going to have some choices.
Yeah. Like,
how do you want to render in a side? Do you want it as a framed? Do you want it as an MD framed, a fancy call out? Do you want syntax highlight on the code or just as verbatim? Those type of choices.
With all the fancy pop-ups that show you examples of what those look like.
That'd be nice.
Can you hover over them?
Yeah, I mean that's possible because that ends up being static images.
Yeah,
it's not going to be on your content, so yeah.
It doesn't have to be like from what yours will look like. It's just a general example.
Yeah.
So kind of related to all of this, because like different user profiles will have different needs, and maybe they will be fine with having different UI for them. For example, like a journal editor might be totally fine by being overwhelmed with buttons and different options, but somebody just wanting to type some things and is still very early in the process of writing the research paper, just wants to, well, write. And there are some apps that like let you configure what kind of UI you want. I think even like Microsoft Office like lets you choose what type of user you are, and then like shows you different options but hides some other in other places. but that might be way too overwhelming trying to maintain all of that. So, but it's,
well, I definitely think that options UI, like there's some of the things that you were mentioning, Steve, are much lower level pieces and probably are like, I don't know, tagged as advanced or something in the template schema, and then are in a just like extra overflow or something.
Yeah.
And I think that's like at least introducing that idea in a small way here of not overwhelming people, such that you can choose a template, single filter, go, like no option configuration, and just like it's one extra screen that we're adding instead of two.
Yeah, there's also there's some natural divisions there, because the decisions over which LaTeX overrides to use is the template designer.
Yeah.
As well as the tags for where to lay out tagged blocks, and then the actual options beyond that is are things like who's going to be the corresponding author, or which email to use for the corresponding author, and things like that, where you have to configure. Where it's the user configuring or giving extra information.
Yeah.
That is
and like things like, is this, a lot of those templates have like a draft watermark on them and show line numbers, and like I think those two things are pieces which are like high level UI template or UI options for that template, but most other things like line spacing and that sort of stuff are super low level.
Draft options, because you might want to be set in draft mode. That's draft. That's LaTeX concept draft.
Draft watermark, yeah. Line number.
Oh. Great. So, and then this starts to make this more than settings. It makes this about, I don't know,
project-wide information.
Yeah, or Command K, or the place to go for stuff.
So I have a funny question. So did you think about not doing the whole export thing? For a reason that like you want to like force users to create interactive documents and share them as such, but obviously like that would be harming the needs of users that are still submitting to classic journals and all of that. But I don't know, it's funny.
Yeah, that would put us on a much slower traction sort of trajectory.
Yeah, I think that was the first 8 months or so of me like wanting to change working, and then like as soon as we hit users with the product, they're like, how do I get my stuff out as a PDF? And so it's basically the first request that folks are having. It's PDF, and then Word docs are sort of the next level up. And so I just don't think that the academic system's ready for a full switch over to everything's HTML first and that side of things. But hopefully this can help transition so that you can work with your interactive piece and then export to a static.
Yeah. And if you make it as easy to do both, I mean, because that's one of the things, if your whole workload's aimed up at getting your PDF submitted, then it's a whole bunch of extra work to go and make a really nice online version, isn't it? But if you can sort of get both in one, or very close, or make that jump to making the interactive online version not that much more work, then maybe more people will be able to do it. That's the thing. You don't have to put a research website up now. You've already got it. You've already got your outreach piece. You can write blog posts from there to link into the papers, reuse the figures that you used in the papers. All of a sudden you can do all the web stuff, and your content's already there because you've been publishing there as well. So I'm hoping that makes it a lot easier for people to do the interactive stuff and do more on the web. Brings you into the whole preprint, publish elsewhere, and what can I do with this PDF that I've given away to the journal thing. But that's a huge grey area that's going to sort of be worked out one way or the other, no? Just because of the existence of preprints and more happening on the web.
Yeah, totally. Does that answer your question, Dragan?
I mean,
Yeah,
yes.
It's basically we're not ready, or like we as a society are not ready for the future.
And I'm thinking, so there's that like risk because you are offering a feature that if they use it, exporting to PDF, that in one way like solves the problem for your users, and they are somewhat even incentivized to leave your platform because they are done. While like, I mean, yeah, it's an ideal utopic world, but if you didn't have the option to export, like they would be forced to stay on the platform. I'm not trying to say in like strong terms, but in general, like some dynamics. But again, like if you don't have export PDF nowadays, nobody will even consider your platform, so they won't even start using it. So it's kind of the trade-off. And yeah, when the switch towards not like relying on static outputs will happen.
Sometime soon. Yeah. No, I mean, this is the conundrum that we were, and like basically caved, and like now we're planning to do a really good PDF export and LaTeX export so that we can get people like putting a foot in this world and starting to work in this interactive way. I think what keeps folks around is hopefully these integrations into the rest of their workflow. And also, I don't know, we talked about different views on their data, and just being able to manipulate it inside of Curvenote and having a bit more of an exploratory and like continual development process inside of Curvenote. And then these PDFs are export targets out to other places like preprint servers or journal articles. But it is, yeah, have to sort of like overlap enough with how people are working today and then start pulling them into this new way of working and support old ways of working, like these traditional ways of working with PDF and Word export. Yeah.
And yeah, a very interesting comment on like writing blog posts or something like that, and just having that in Curvenote. There are some other products that have done that, and like that let you. I think PubPub is definitely like very straightforward example for that. And they have also like different teams, and so connected to the whole topic of views, having different teams is also probably there somewhere. But yeah, that's a good another like I don't know business line.
Yeah, totally. It's because there's, well, I don't know if you follow Twitter, every now and then people are asked how to build an academic website because they all need to show off, especially when you're getting to like the end of a PhD and you've been, I don't know, nobody can access your work outside of the academic system. So either you're going into industry or you need to showcase all of your work in a more comprehensive fashion to any potential employer. And so that's something that is a struggle for folks all the time. Yeah. That I've seen.
Yeah, and like they usually know one language, so like trying to translate all of that into some web-based language, and I've seen that people use often like GitHub and Jekyll, if I'm pronouncing that even correctly, or some stack with Markdown that can get translated to HTML or something like that. But yeah, like having the same product for your writing and for publishing, like your own blog post, yeah, that is definitely a cool thing to have, because like no learning curve, everything's there, you're familiar, everything's cool. So I had a question like in regards to using the product, so like more on the community meetup side in general, not just a specific feature. So I tried using Curvenote in combination with Jupyter notebooks. And so one thing that surprised me or not was that Curvenote, so for you to work with the Jupyter notebooks, you have to install a browser extension. Is that correct?
That's currently correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you install the extension, and then you visit the notebook, and then you have the option to like send that to Curvenote. And so it gets sent. The UI also has some weird things. Like there is the button, I think it's like save or something like that in 2 places, and that's kind of weird. But when I saved the notebook, when I opened it in Curvenote, it was empty. It was always empty. It had some yellow status up at the top of the article. Something was, I don't know, something like draft wrong.
Okay, something went wrong.
And so, yeah, I was unable to see what I saved from Jupyter Notebook. And then, like, as far as I understood, the process is to continue editing on Jupyter. And then once, like, every time that you want to update your Curvenote, you save, like, with the browser extension, and then you go to Curvenote and check it out. And so also the question is, like, can you edit in Curvenote and somehow like make changes in Curvenote that are reflected in the Jupyter, or is it always a unidirectional flow of data from Jupyter to Curvenote, or like can they work together?
Okay. Yeah. Yes, there is ways to pull information back. That's either right now Curvenote is a viewing tool, not a code editing tool. And so you can edit the text over in the Curvenote side if you edit a notebook, and then you can pull those changes back in either at the cell level independently or as the entire notebook.
Okay, but if you're making changes to the code, it needs to be in Jupyter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that intended to be improved, changed, or?
Yeah, I mean, to bring code editing experience over into the Curvenote platform, we would need like the Jupyter kernel and running that infrastructure. Yeah. And I think we talked a little bit last time about having the Jupyter Lite with running the kernel locally. I think that's one way to go. The other way to go is to connect to public resources. A lot of times how folks are working is that their data isn't available everywhere. And so they have a specific compute environment that has access to those things, and their compute isn't completely like transferable to some other place, if that makes sense. So it's a hard problem. Absolutely. In the future, we will get there. I think that's like, it's not the highest priority thing that we're working on by any means at the moment.
Okay, so in general, to understand, like, to be able to have like fully interactive notebooks, you have to depend on Jupyter in one way or the other currently.
Yes.
What do you mean by fully interactive?
Well, to have code blocks and that can feed one into each other. And...
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So like, there's no way to create notebooks on Curvenote at the moment without first being in the Jupyter ecosystem.
So we'd have to create, yes. So if you wanted an interactive plot using Plotly or Altair or something like that, you need to create that in the notebook and then get that up onto the platform. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that like shaving off different pieces of that, like for example, being able to create a visualization in Curvenote without any knowledge of Jupyter even, and leveraging some of that ecosystem, like you have a CSV file, you want to plot it. There's a lot of tools out there that allow you to do that that are also compatible with backwards compatible with Jupyter. So I think there's some paths to add interactivity over in Curvenote without going fully into supporting Jupyter kernels as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for explaining.
I think one of the things that one of the things and one of the reasons as well behind the current thing was we were trying to encourage this. If you're gonna, we didn't want to allow code just to be edited on the platform independently of any compute environment. Because imagine if you think about coming to a particular version of a notebook and thinking that, and there's obviously trust in this, thinking that this was a single execution of this notebook, and this version of the output here was a result of the code cell above it. Being able to let people come in and edit the code without being able to recompute and update the outputs seemed wrong. So we still haven't got there anyway quite yet, but what we are aiming for is this idea that you take a sort of reproducible snapshot, or we want to encourage that you're working in Jupyter, you take a snapshot of the notebook, send it up, and then so if you're rigorous about that, then all your notebooks on Curvenote represent these individual runs that you can step back through. But that requires rigor on the user's part still. But at least without allowing them to edit code up here, it would be, there's less likely that they break any of that.
Yeah, trying to understand like where and how Curvenote fits. So like if you are writing interactive documents, then you're still on Jupyter side, but for some final touches and like review process, you use Curvenote.
Yeah, for the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are like sharing notebooks through screenshots or that sort of thing, and so getting feedback is like that's sort of the workflow that we're taking over there, is the commenting and viewing workflow, which is happening like through GitHub renderer even at the moment, which doesn't render things over 10 megabytes, generally fails, and that sort of thing. So that's sort of the feedback loop that we're going after at the moment.
But we will bring the prop building up in some form, whether it's the whole hog or because there's a big difference between having sort of a limited Jupyter environment, like when you go back and think about Jupyter Lite, there's an opinionated stack there, and then that works. But then supporting anybody's environment with their needs in terms of the library setup, the data demands, because sometimes people have got big data or big chunks of data. That's again, that's another step. But just having enough to be able to create you could do a lot with something light in the middle, and we will get there.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned like having mismatched versions of parts of documents and what was output, like versioning is really hard. So there's so many pieces, especially like when not everything is in your control, but you are like pulling the pieces from outside. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
plus having other review systems somehow fit into all of that. So that's a lot. Because like versioning creates one stream, and then like different pieces that have their own versions create different streams that can all, interleave and like be weird. And then review system is another stream, which is like more, again, like somehow time, it progresses in time, but in a different, of a different kind than just versioning. So like mixing all of that is hard. And like, do you know, perhaps let me formulate it as a question. Are you aware of some other products that are doing a good job handling versioning and reviews good that aren't like GitHub maybe?
And for reviews, are you talking about the commenting workflow and
Yes.
possibly suggestion workflow?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Observable HQ is probably one of the better ones that I've seen out there. Is they have some good, and they're sort of notebook based. They're community fork based. They have cross imports between notebooks as well. And yeah, and then I think they're like a bit level deeper in the amount of code that you have to know. And so I guess we're trying to be one step above that in some ways. So this has things like forks and then suggestions, and then it's also immediately editable as well. And it sort of knows that you've changed something and all of that jazz.
Yeah.
But very, very much code focused on what they're showing.
Yeah, it's very much a notebook.
Console log, man. Too much
Is this
Python.
JavaScript? Okay,
yeah.
Dan, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that will run anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not quite JavaScript either.
Isn't it? Okay.
It's their flavor of JavaScript, which.
Are you perhaps aware how satisfied people are with their, like what they are offering when it comes to like mixing, forking, versioning, and comments and suggestions?
In this platform?
Yes.
I think quite well, maybe? I don't know. It's like as a company, they're definitely growing and continuing to get users. And I think there's also some of that flavor of the profile side that we talked about earlier, is people are creating their own like exploratory visualization profiles on Observable, and that's replacing some of their like a website that they might have made on their own. And so I think this is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, you can see the two unsaved edits, and then you fork, and then you sign up, and
yeah, and I get a copy of my space. Yeah. So fork is a copy.
It is connected to the parent, though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
This is nifty.
Yeah.
I do like this sort of thing.
Yeah, this is there because they're not using. It's not JavaScript, I guess, or it's a opinionated higher level of JavaScript, and so everything is in each cell is named, and then everything always runs all the time. So it's a completely reactive notebook as well. And then you're also seeing there a cross import between projects down at the bottom. And that one's
I'm not sure
unpinned.
what that right menu is doing exactly. Is it showing the forks?
It's showing
as
execution flow. And so you can write anything in this notebook out of order. And so a lot of the details are always at the bottom of these notebooks, and then the plots are at the top. And so that's showing what things are connected to what other things.
Cool, because of the dependencies actually in the code.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Because that is something about the Jupyter. When you're working in Jupyter, you have this sort of blanket global workspace, and then it does nothing to sort of help you understand whether you're out with sequence or not. So sometimes you're working in it, doing something, and then you just have to say, okay, clear everything and re-execute to make sure that you're actually in a sane order and you haven't, got yourself in some strange state. Because sometimes you find yourself with bugs because of that, or wrong analysis, and then you really have to push yourself to keep it in clean execution state. And this is I do like that. It's good. It's a nice menu. It's something that we need to bring across. I'm dying to do something in our notebook which needs some sort of style updates, is to visually indicate the dependency between these two blocks, for example.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
And because these are coupled, it'll refuse to change the version on this block. If you try in edit mode, I'm not in edit mode because it's actually coupled to the code block, but our UI doesn't reflect that properly yet. It will soon. There's something just as funky with a set that target as this. Cool.
Are you aware of any other platforms other than GitHub that have that review mode and versioning?
I know like maybe about some things that do those things, like they do one or the other. I know that there's review software for academics and for versioning. I'm not even sure who is doing versioning. There are a lot of like even Notion is having some weird version of versioning, and like mind mapping apps. I know they also have that, but they are tracking all the little changes, which is weird. I think Notion was also tracking like literally every letter change, and users were super frustrated by that. But mixing the two sounds like a nightmare. I know that because like when we were building Notebook, we tried to version graphs, like very visual data structures, and have the review system with suggestions. Actually, suggestions was the main mechanics. And yeah, it was just hell. So yeah, speaking about like again versioning, and Liz was also mentioning, like, is there some sort of diff system in general, like maybe not just for LaTeX, but between notebooks or something?
You get it down here. I mean, when you're in the notebook, our extension adds this. So this is us adding in some UI which shows the differences between the versions.
But that is not carried across to the platform and text at this stage.
Yeah, and it's not available at the sort of global container level as well, where we might want to see what code, what parts of the document has changed, and it will come. It's very doable. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that diff piece, especially in the like over to the like LaTeX export and showing an exported diff side of things, that's also something that it's challenging. Like there's a lot of stuff going on there, and one of the reasons we haven't brought that into the platform side yet is our text structures are not or like our WYSIWYG editor is not a text structure, and so there aren't out of the box tools to show diffs of that in the same way that there are for code blocks.
You'd have to flatten it, or
yeah, and so like one option could be to like transfer to Markdown, show the diff in Markdown, and that's at least gets you some of the way there maybe. But like for example, the idea of like how like Google Docs or Word Docs are doing it with the track changes side of things. That's a bit different as well. Anyhow, lots to do.
So what they're recording actually, like they're tracking those tiny diffs and then displaying a chunk of them, or?
In Word and Google Docs, is that?
Yeah, Google Docs.
Yeah, they are. I'm not entirely sure what their data structure is. They're certainly recording every key press, and that is what goes back to the server. And they don't have, like, a document cannot be broken up into smaller chunks and having some independent versioning on those chunks, if that makes sense. And then I'm not sure of how they're actually doing those suggestions, and if they're, well, I don't know, this is getting into the weeds. I don't know if that's part of the document structure or an annotation on the document saying at this location insert something, and then the author can choose to insert that actually into the document structure. I don't know if that answered anything, but
It did.
Yeah, but it's about how you render the diff then as well, though. I mean, do you go by a side-by-side diff? Then Word and Google Docs has the interlaced removal and addition style that you get with suggested changes. And then Word did something funny with balloons as well, no? They had this balloon mode, which wasn't, we might avoid that one. But certainly how to present the diffs is a big, is a big challenge.
I remember that Confluence is showing very visual diffs. And now, like, totally reminded with Google Docs, like those small diffs, like one keystroke differences, and then trying to just append a bunch of those. But again, like some changes, like it's okay if you're changing parts of the text, but at one point you may convert an entire paragraph to a heading or something like that. So that like influences not just that local change, but like a broader scope. So that's kind of an interesting problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because at the minute we're sort of flipping back and forward and grokking, and being able just to even get some diff up here to be able to tell the difference between different versions.
Yeah, because
and then versions in the draft is what everyone was referring to.
Yeah, the other complication to think about there is actually you have permission management layered on top of that, is that you can, yeah, exactly. You can give someone suggestion access to your document, and then that's, layered on top, and they can't actually edit the underlying stuff, but they can add annotations on top or maybe comments. And anyways, it gets even more of a mess.
Sounds beautiful.
Even more interesting. Yeah.
It is like quite interesting.
Cool. Yeah. I'm going to call time there, although
you got to run.
Good discussion. I've got to run, and I'll see you all next week.
Yeah,
cool.
Thanks for time.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Have a good run. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye bye.